It was a cold morning, and the city streets were still quiet. A few cars passed by, but most people were still inside their warm homes. Near the back door of a small restaurant, a woman stood alone. Her skin was dark, her hair tied back in a messy bun, and her belly was round with a child inside. She wore an old, torn coat that barely kept her warm. Her shoes were worn out, and her hands shook slightly from the cold. She wasn't begging loudly. She didn't shout or cry. She just stood there, waiting patiently, hoping someone might notice her. She stepped closer to the back entrance of the restaurant where the staff usually threw out leftover food. She had been here before, many times. Sometimes the staff gave her a piece of bread or a box of rice. Sometimes they didn't even look at her. Today, her voice was soft as she asked, "Is there anything left?" The cook looked at her and shook his head without a word. Then he turned away, busy with morning orders. She smiled weakly and whispered, "Okay, thank you," and turned to leave. She didn't argue or beg again, just walked away slowly, her hands covering her belly protectively. From across the street, a man sat in a luxury black car. His window was slightly open, and he had seen everything. He was dressed in a sharp suit. Holding a cup of coffee, he was a millionaire, a man who owned several buildings in the city. People respected him, some even feared him. But something about this woman made him pause. He had meetings to attend, contracts to sign. Yet he sat there, frozen, his eyes following her every step. She walked toward a narrow alley not far from the restaurant. Her steps were slow, and she looked tired. He couldn't stop watching her. He didn't understand why she touched something deep inside him. She hadn't begged him, hadn't even noticed him. But the way she looked at the trash like it might hold hope broke something inside him. His heart beat faster, not from pity, but from something more, something old. Finally, he opened his car door and stepped out. His expensive shoes clicked against the pavement as he walked toward her. She didn't hear him at first. He called gently, "Excuse me, miss." She turned, surprised. Her eyes widened a little when she saw his clothes, his polished look. She took a step back, unsure. Then he said, "Do you need help?" She looked down, then back up. Her voice was quiet. "I'm not asking for money. Just food." That answer hit him like a slap. He had offered money many times in the past to people who begged, people who lied, but this woman had refused. His money without a second thought. She wasn't playing a role. She wasn't asking for more than she needed, just food for her and her unborn baby. He looked at her again, really looked. Her lips were dry, her fingers purple from cold. Yet, her eyes still held pride, still held something unbroken. He said, "Please, let me help," and pulled out a few bills. She shook her head. "No. Just food." He didn't know what to say. For a moment, they both stood there. Two people from different worlds, connected by silence. He wanted to ask more questions, but didn't know how. He wanted to help without making her feel small. The woman turned away slowly and continued walking, disappearing into the alley. He stood there for a moment longer, then got back into his car, but he didn't drive away. He kept looking at the alley, thinking, remembering. His mind went back to a time when his wife had been pregnant, years ago, before the accident, before she died in the hospital, bleeding and alone. He remembered her voice, her smile, the way she looked when she touched her belly. He hadn't thought about that day in a long time, but now, watching this woman, those memories came back sharp and painful. He looked down at his hands, strong hands that had signed million-dollar deals. But right now, those hands felt useless. What good was all his money if he couldn't even help one woman who was cold and hungry? He felt a strange ache in his chest, not pity, but guilt. And something else, maybe purpose. He started the car again, but didn't drive away. Instead, he turned toward the alley, slowly following the path she had taken. The city was waking up, but his world was changing. One woman by the trash can had reminded him of something he had forgotten, and he wasn't going to walk away this time, in that single morning, without a single cry for help. She had touched a heart that had been asleep for years, and he knew this was not the end. It was just the beginning. The alley was narrow and quiet, with old broken walls and a smell of wet trash. The woman slowly sat down on a piece of cardboard near the back. Her belly was heavy, and she held it with both hands. Her face showed pain, not just from her body, but from her heart too. She looked around to make sure no one was nearby, then opened a small plastic bag. Inside it were just 2 pieces of dry bread and a bottle of water. She took one bite, then stopped. She pulled out a smaller piece and placed it inside a torn cloth bag near her feet. It was for later, for the baby she would soon bring into the world. She leaned her head against the wall and closed her eyes. Her body was tired, but her mind couldn't rest. She remembered her old life, how she used to have a little apartment, a job, and a husband who made her laugh. But then everything fell apart. Her husband died in a road accident. The rent piled up. Her job let her go, saying the company was cutting staff. After that, the days became harder, and then she was here, living in alleys and empty buildings. Her baby kicked gently inside her, and she smiled through the pain, softly whispering, "We'll be okay, just wait a little longer." Meanwhile, the millionaire was still inside his car, parked just around the corner. He hadn't followed her fully, but knew where she went. He was thinking, not like a businessman, but like a man who had just been shaken. Her voice stayed in his mind, the way she said just food with honesty. Most people he dealt with wore masks, played games, or hid their true faces. But this woman, she had nothing to hide. Her truth was raw and real. He remembered the eyes of his wife before she passed away, and for the first time in years, he felt weak after a few minutes. He stepped out again. He didn't want to scare her or make her feel ashamed, so he walked slowly, quietly, and carried a paper bag from a cafe he had stopped at. It was filled with fresh sandwiches, fruit, and hot soup. As he reached the alley, he paused. She hadn't seen him yet. She was resting, but he didn't want to leave without helping. So he gently placed the bag near her side and whispered, "For you." She opened her eyes quickly, a little frightened, but then she saw the same man from earlier. Standing a few feet away with kind eyes, she sat up slowly, confused. "Why?" she asked. He just nodded and said, "Please eat," then stepped back and gave her space. She looked inside the bag and her eyes filled with tears. She hadn't eaten a warm meal in weeks. She picked up the soup and held it close to her face, smelling the warmth. Then she looked at him again and said, "Thank you." "I don't know your name," he smiled gently. "It doesn't matter," he said. "Just take care of yourself and your baby." She took a sip of the soup, and the heat brought tears to her eyes. Not from the temperature, but from something deeper, kindness. She looked down and quietly said, "My name is Jada." He paused for a second, then replied softly, "I'm Marcus," for a while. They didn't say anything more. The sound of the city grew louder as people went to work, and traffic filled the streets. But inside that alley, there was a kind of peace. Jada felt like someone had finally seen her, not just as a poor woman or a beggar, but as a person. Marcus sat down on a nearby step. He didn't ask too many questions. He just listened as she spoke, slowly and quietly, about her past. How she had been a teacher in a local school, how she had dreams once, how those dreams broke one by one. She didn't cry much, just small tears that slipped from her eyes now and then. Marcus listened carefully, nodding, sometimes asking simple questions, but mostly staying quiet. He didn't feel sorry for her. He felt respect. Her strength was real, deeper than anything money could buy. He saw it in the way she sat up straight, in the way she smiled even when her hands trembled. After a while, she finished the food and leaned back again. Marcus stood up, unsure what to say next. He felt like walking away would be wrong, but staying too long might make her uncomfortable. So he said, "I'll be nearby if you need anything," and turned to go. But before he took more than 3 steps, she called out, "Why are you helping me?" He turned, looked into her tired eyes, and said, "Because someone should have helped my wife. And I didn't." Then he walked away, leaving her in silence, her mouth open slightly. But no words came out. She held her stomach, and a single tear rolled down her cheek, not from sadness, but from something she hadn't felt in a long time: hope. For the first time in months, she felt like maybe, just maybe, things could change. She looked at the bag of food, then up toward the sky, whispering, "Thank you." And nearby, Marcus sat in his car again. His eyes closed. He had no plan, no reason, but he knew this wouldn't be the last time he saw Jada. Something had begun, something small but powerful. And neither of them knew yet just how far this simple act of kindness would go. The sun was climbing higher in the sky, but the chill in the air had not gone. Jada sat in the alley with her hands resting on her round belly. The warm food had helped her feel a little better, but her body still ached from sleeping on cold ground every night. She looked at the empty soup container beside her and smiled softly. It had been so long since she had eaten something hot. She could still feel the kindness of the stranger Marcus. His name echoed in her mind like a song from long ago, gentle and calming. She hadn't planned to tell him anything, but something in his eyes had felt safe, like he was truly listening, not judging her. In this city, most people walked past her without seeing her at all, but Marcus had looked right into her soul. Jada leaned back against the brick wall and thought about her life. Just 2 years ago, she had stood in front of a classroom, teaching little kids how to read. Her smile had been bright, her clothes neat, her heart full of dreams. She had a loving husband, a man who made her laugh every day. They had planned a family, saved money, even talked about buying a small house. But one rainy evening, everything changed. Her husband, Darren, had gone out to buy some baby things. He never came back. The truck hit his car at an intersection. The police told her it was quick, but nothing felt quick when the pain stayed forever. After Darren's death, everything fell apart. She couldn't work for months, and when she tried to go back, someone else had taken her job. The bills piled up. Her savings disappeared, and slowly she was pushed onto the street. Her hand moved over her belly as her baby kicked gently. "I'm still here," she whispered. "We'll make it through." Even when everything had been taken from her, Jada never hated the world. She didn't scream or steal. She believed there was still good out there, even if it was hard to find. And today, Marcus had proved she was right. But now she was scared too. Scared of hoping too much. Scared that this moment of kindness would be the last one. Marcus, on the other hand, sat inside his parked car with his hands on the wheel, but he wasn't driving. He stared ahead, not at the road, but at the past. His wife's face appeared clearly in his mind, soft eyes, full of love. He remembered the last time she smiled at him before the pain started. The hospital had been full of noise, machines, and rushing nurses. But all he remembered was the silence after her heartbeat stopped. She had died giving birth, and the child had died minutes later. Since then, he had buried himself in work, in business deals, in cold routines. He told himself for years that emotions were a waste of time. But now, after seeing Jada, after hearing her simple words, "just food," he felt like his heart had cracked open. The pain he had locked away for so long was now pouring out. And strangely, it didn't feel like drowning. It felt like breathing again. He looked out of the window and thought, she didn't ask for help, but I have to do more. It wasn't charity. It was something deeper, something personal. He picked up his phone and called his assistant. "I want you to book a room for someone," he said. "A woman, pregnant. She needs rest and safety." His assistant was surprised, but didn't ask questions. Marcus always got what he wanted. After ending the call, he stepped out of the car and walked back toward the alley. This time, he walked with purpose, not just curiosity. He found Jada still sitting in the same spot, looking tired but peaceful. She saw him and sat up straighter. "You came back," she said, a bit surprised. He nodded. "I have something to offer." She looked at him carefully, unsure. "A room," he said. "Somewhere warm, clean. Just for tonight, maybe longer, if you need." Jada blinked slowly, her lips moved. But no sound came out for a moment. Finally, she asked, "Why? Are you doing this?" Marcus looked into her eyes and answered, "Because I didn't help the one I loved, and I won't make the same mistake again." Tears filled Jada's eyes. She covered her mouth and looked down, then nodded. She stood up slowly, holding her belly with both hands. "Thank you," she whispered. "I don't have anything to give back." Marcus shook his head. "You already did." She didn't understand what he meant, but she followed him. They walked together to his car, and for the first time in a long while, Jada sat on a soft leather seat. The warmth from the heater touched her face, and she leaned back with a sigh as they drove through the city. People in other cars glanced at them. Some looked confused, some even judged. But inside that car, there was only silence and a quiet bond growing between two broken hearts, slowly finding the strength to heal again. Jada looked out of the window and whispered to her baby, "We're going somewhere safe," and this time, she believed it. Marcus didn't say anything, but his heart was calm. For the first time in years, he wasn't thinking about money or power. He was just thinking about doing the right thing, and that was enough for now. The hotel wasn't very fancy, but it was clean, warm, and safe. Marcus had asked his assistant to find a quiet place with a private room, far from noise and questions. As the car pulled up, Jada looked out the window, unsure if this was really for her. Her hands tightened on her belly. She whispered to herself, "It's okay. Just trust." Marcus got out and opened the door for her. She stepped out slowly, one hand holding her side. Her body was tired, but her heart was more afraid. This was too good to be true. Inside the lobby, the woman at the front desk looked at Cade. Jada with surprise. Her clothes were old and dirty, and her shoes were falling apart. But Marcus stood beside her calmly. "The room is ready," he asked. The woman nodded quickly and handed over the keycard. "Room 207. She said, trying not to stare. Marcus didn't care what people thought. He walked with Jada to the elevator, staying beside her the whole time as the doors closed. He saw her shoulders tremble. "Are you all right?" he asked. She nodded slowly. I haven't been indoors in weeks." When they reached the room, Jada stepped in first. Her eyes moved over the soft bed, clean sheets, and a small bathroom. She covered her mouth with one hand and took a deep breath. "It's warm," she whispered. Marcus stood at the door. "You can rest here as long as you need." She turned to him with teary eyes. "Why are you doing this for me? You don't even know me." He didn't answer right away. He looked at the floor, then said softly, "You remind me of someone. Someone I loved and lost." She didn't ask more. She understood loss. She walked slowly to the bed and sat down. The mattress welcomed her weight, and her body relaxed for the first time in days. Marcus placed a small bag on the table beside her. "I had my assistant buy some things," he said. "Clothes, toiletries, some food." Jada looked at the bag, then at him. "Thank you," she said again. Her voice was tired, but honest. He nodded. "I'll give you some space now." He turned to leave, but before he stepped out, she asked, "Will I see you again?" He paused, then said, "Yes, if you want." She gave a small smile, and he left. Closing the door gently behind him, Jada sat on the bed for a long moment, just breathing. She slowly opened the bag and pulled out a soft dress, warm socks, soap, and a towel. She walked into the bathroom and stared at her reflection in the mirror. Her face looked older than her age, her skin dry, her eyes tired. But under all that, she saw herself again, not just a homeless woman, but Jada, a teacher, a mother, a fighter. She took a long bath, washing away weeks of dirt and sadness. The warm water felt like heaven. Her baby kicked gently, and she placed a hand on her belly. "We're okay now," she whispered. "We made it through, after the bath." She put on the clean clothes and walked back to the bed. She sat quietly, eating the fruit Marcus had brought. Her hands shook a little, not from hunger, but from emotion. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but tonight she had hope again. Meanwhile, Marcus sat in his car outside the hotel, staring out the window. His chest felt heavy, but not in a painful way. It was like a weight he had carried for years was finally being lifted. He thought about his wife again, how she used to volunteer at women's shelters, how she always said, "Kindness is the only real power we have." He had forgotten that truth, buried it under business deals and meetings. But now, with Jada, he had remembered it. He called his assistant again. "I want to set up a medical checkup for her," he said, quiet, respectful. "No media, no attention." His assistant replied, "Understood." Marcus ended the call and sat back. His eyes were tired, but his mind was calm. For once, he wasn't thinking about profits or contracts. He was thinking about one woman and her unborn child, and how they deserved a second chance. The next morning, Marcus returned to the hotel with breakfast. He knocked gently on the door. Jada opened it, wearing the new dress and a soft smile. Her hair was brushed, her eyes clearer than before. "Good morning," she said. He handed her the food and asked, "How are you feeling?" She smiled, "Better than I have in a long time." He sat on the chair while she ate slowly. "I've arranged a small clinic visit," he said, "just to make sure everything is okay with the baby." She nodded. "Thank you." Again, he looked at her seriously. "You don't have to keep thanking me," he said. "You're doing all the hard work." She chuckled softly. "Feels like we're both healing a little." He nodded, not denying it. They sat quietly. For a while, no words needed, just understanding. Two people who had lost something deep, now helping each other find the light again. Jada looked out the window, sunlight touching her face, and whispered, "Maybe this is the start of a new life." Marcus agreed, silently. And in his heart, he knew she was right. Something had changed. Not just in her world, but in his too. And that change had begun the moment she asked, "Is there anything left?" And he finally answered with more than just words. Later that evening, the hotel room was quiet. A small lamp glowed softly beside the bed. Jada sat near the window, her hands resting on her belly. Outside, the world moved fast, cars, people, lights, but inside the room, time felt slower, safer. She hadn't felt this calm in months. Each moment felt like a gift she didn't expect. She kept asking herself, "Why is he helping me?" She wasn't used to kindness without a price. In her world, people usually wanted something in return. She looked around the room again, at the clean bed, the warm clothes, the small plate of food she had saved for later. All of it had come from Marcus, a man she didn't know well, but somehow trusted. Her heart was full of questions, yet also full of thanks. She whispered to her baby, "Maybe not everyone has forgotten how to care." She smiled softly, then looked toward the door, wondering if he would return again. Meanwhile, Marcus sat at home in his large apartment. The walls were filled with silent pictures of his wife, her favorite books, her smile frozen in time. He stared at one picture for a long while, the one where she stood by a garden, her hand on her own belly. He had lost them both that day. The woman he loved, and the child he never got to hold. For years, he had closed the door to that part of his life. But Jada, in some strange way, had opened it again. He remembered her eyes, filled with quiet pain, yet never asking for pity. She had strength in her voice, even when she spoke softly. That strength reminded him of his wife, and it made him think, what if this wasn't a random meeting? What if he had been meant to find Jada, to do something real for someone who truly needed it? He stood up, walked to his desk, and picked up the phone. "I want to do more for her," he told his assistant. "Find a small apartment. Clean and safe, somewhere she can stay longer." His assistant paused, surprised, but then said, "Yes, sir. I'll look right away." Marcus ended the call and looked out the window. He felt nervous, something he hadn't felt in years. This wasn't a business deal. This was real life, and it scared him, but also gave him purpose again. A purpose that money could never buy. Next morning, Marcus returned to the hotel with a small folder in his hand. Jada opened the door, wearing a new sweater and a soft smile. "Good morning," she said. He smiled back. "Can I come in for a moment?" She nodded and stepped aside. He sat on the chair and handed her the folder. "What's this?" she asked, opening it slowly. Inside were photos of a small apartment, 1-bedroom, a kitchen, a soft couch, and even a baby crib already placed in the corner. Her eyes widened. "Is this for me?" Marcus nodded. "Yes, it's already paid for. You can move in today if you want." Jada covered her mouth, her hands shaking. I don't know what to say." He looked at her gently. "You don't have to say anything. Just know you deserve better." She blinked fast, trying to hold back tears. "Why are you doing this?" She asked again. "Is it charity? Pity?" Marcus shook his head. "No," he said. "It's not charity. It's a gift. One that I wish someone had given to my wife when she needed help." He looked away for a second, then added, "She died during childbirth, and I couldn't do anything to save her. But now, maybe I can save someone else." Jada reached out and gently touched his hand. "You already have," she whispered. "You saved me." They sat in silence for a moment. Then Marcus said, "There's something else." Jada looked at him. "Curious. I run a small foundation," he said. "We help women find jobs, learn new skills, start again. I want you to work with us." Jada's eyes grew even wider. "Me? I don't know if I'm ready." He nodded. "You don't have to decide now, but think about it. You've been a teacher before. You've survived so much. That's experience no school can teach." Jada smiled slowly, hope growing in her chest like sunlight through clouds. "I'll think about it," she said. "But thank you for seeing me, not just my situation." Marcus stood up. "Pack your things. I'll drive you to your new home." She laughed softly. "This still feels like a dream." He smiled. "Then let's make it real." Later that day, as they drove through the city, Jada looked out the window. The streets no longer cold and cruel, but filled with new possibility. She saw a woman at the corner asking for food, and her heart ached. She whispered, "Maybe I can help her one day too." Marcus heard her and nodded silently, knowing she meant it. When they reached the apartment, Jada stepped inside and gasped. The sunlight poured through the windows. The bed looked soft and inviting, and on the table was a note that read, "Welcome home." She turned to Marcus and said, This is the first time I've had a home since I lost everything." He looked at her and said, "Then let it be the first of many good things to come." Jada walked to the baby's crib and placed her hand on it. "This child," she said, "will grow up knowing kindness, not hunger." Marcus nodded, his eyes a little wet. "And strength," he said, "because they'll have you as a mother." That night, Jada lay on a real bed, under warm covers, her baby safe inside her. And for the first time in a long time, she didn't fall asleep in fear. She fell asleep in peace. Outside, the city lights shone like stars, but inside that small apartment, something brighter had begun, a second chance, not just for Jada, but for Marcus too, and for the life yet to come. 2 weeks passed quickly, and Jada's new life started to take shape. The small apartment was quiet and peaceful, and every time she looked around, she smiled a little more. She still found it hard to believe that this place, this warmth, this safety was all hers. Every morning she made tea, sat by the window, and talked softly to the baby growing inside her. She would say things like, "We're almost there, little one, and your mama's strong." Each day, Marcus visited with groceries, soft blankets, or simple things like baby lotion and vitamins. He never came empty-handed, but more than the things. It was his presence that mattered. He never treated her like someone broken. He spoke to her like an equal, listened when she talked, and smiled when she joked. She found herself laughing again, not fake laughter, but real, warm laughter that came from the chest. It had been so long since she felt that. One morning, while folding some new baby clothes Marcus had brought, Jada felt a sharp pain in her lower belly. She held the table tightly and breathed slowly. The pain passed after a few seconds, but she knew what it meant. Her time was near. She sat down and reached for her phone, her hands shaking slightly. Marcus had told her to call if anything felt strange. She did, and within 15 minutes, he was there, helping her to the car. Driving faster than he ever had before at the hospital, nurses rushed to check her. They said the baby was coming sooner than expected. Marcus stayed by her side the whole time, not in the way, but present. Ready, he remembered the last time he was in a hospital like this, his heart racing, full of fear. That time, he lost everything. But this time felt different. This time, he was here to protect, not to mourn. He looked at Jada, and she looked back with strength in her eyes. Labor was long and painful. Jada gripped the bedsheets and cried out in pain, but never once gave up. Marcus stood outside the room for most of it, waiting, pacing, breathing heavily with worry. He had faced business disasters, courtroom pressure, even life-threatening deals, but nothing made him this nervous. After hours of waiting, a nurse finally came out and smiled. "She's okay," she said, "and so is the baby. It's a girl." Marcus felt his knees weaken with relief. He leaned against the wall and closed his eyes, whispering, "Thank you." When he was allowed inside, Jada was lying in bed, tired but glowing in her arms, a tiny baby girl wrapped in a soft pink blanket. Her face was round, eyes closed, mouth gently moving as she slept. Jada looked at Marcus and smiled weakly. "She's here," she said, "and she's perfect." He walked closer, afraid to move too fast. "Can I?" he asked. She nodded and gently placed the baby in his arms. The moment he held her, time seemed to stop. The baby was so small, yet so full of life. She moved slightly and made a soft sound. Marcus looked down at her with eyes full of wonder. "She's beautiful," he whispered. Jada watched him and said, "I named her Hope." Marcus looked at her, surprised. "Hope?" She nodded. "Because that's what you gave me." Tears filled his eyes, but he blinked them away. "Then she'd grow up strong," he said, "just like her mother." The nurses came in again to check on Jada and the baby. Marcus stepped aside, but kept glancing back, feeling something shift inside his heart. This wasn't just about kindness anymore. This was about something deeper. He felt like a part of this new life, this new beginning. Over the next few days, Marcus visited the hospital daily, bringing soft toys, diapers, and even a small gold bracelet with the baby's name engraved on it. The hospital staff noticed how gentle and present he was. Some thought he might be family. Others wondered if he was more, but neither Marcus nor Jada explained, because they didn't need to. There was a bond between them that didn't need words or labels, just understanding. On the fourth day, Jada was ready to go home. The doctor gave her some advice, told her to rest, and handed her the discharge papers. Marcus came to pick them up, holding the car seat like a proud father. Jada walked slowly, holding baby Hope close to her chest. As they left the hospital, a nurse smiled and said, "Take care of your little miracle." Back at the apartment, Jada walked inside and looked around. Everything was still there, untouched, just as she left it. But now, the space felt even more alive. She placed Hope in the crib Marcus had set up. The baby slept peacefully, arms raised beside her tiny face. Jada turned to Marcus and said, "Thank you." Again and again, Marcus shook his head. "You don't need to thank me. You did this. You survived. You brought her into the world." Jada looked at him and said, "But you gave us a chance." They stood there for a while, not talking. Just watching the baby sleep that night, Marcus sat at home, holding a photo he had taken of Hope in his phone. He looked at it for a long time, then opened a drawer and pulled out a dusty photo of his wife. He placed the two pictures side by side and whispered, "She's here now, and I won't fail this time." At the same moment, Jada sat in the apartment, feeding her daughter gently. The city lights outside glowed softly, and everything felt different. She didn't feel alone anymore. She didn't feel afraid. She looked down at Hope and said, "Your name is not just a word, baby girl. It's our whole story." And with that, the night wrapped around them like a blanket, full of dreams, memories, and a future that had just begun. Days turned into weeks, and Jada's life slowly began to settle. The days were filled with gentle routines, feeding baby Hope, changing diapers, and rocking her to sleep. Nights were still long, and sometimes full of crying, but Jada didn't complain. Each time she held her baby, she remembered the cold nights on the streets. And her heart whispered, "We're safe now." Marcus visited often. Sometimes in the morning, sometimes in the evening. He never stayed too long. Just enough to bring supplies, check in, and share a quiet moment with them. He always brought something thoughtful: fresh fruit, soft baby clothes, books for Jada, even little musical toys that made Hope giggle. He never asked for anything in return, and he never tried to control her life. He simply supported and stayed close, like a quiet guardian. One afternoon, Marcus arrived with a strange look on his face. Jada noticed it right away. He wasn't his usual calm self. She opened the door and asked, "Is everything all right?" He nodded, but hesitated. Then he said, "I want to talk to you about something. It's a little unexpected." Jada stepped aside, letting him in. He sat down slowly, then pulled a folder from his bag and placed it on the table. "I've been thinking," Marcus began, "you've shown strength, kindness, and leadership, and I think it's time the world sees it too." Jada raised her eyebrows, confused. "What do you mean?" He opened the folder. Inside were papers and a small card. "There's a press event in 2 days," he said. "It's for my foundation. They want to meet the new outreach coordinator, and I want that to be you." Jada stared at him, shocked. "Me?" she whispered. "But I'm not. I mean, I don't know how to speak at events. I'm just someone who got lucky." Marcus leaned forward. "No, you're someone who kept going. When life knocked you down, you're someone who gave birth alone, who kept her heart kind when the world turned cold. That's not luck, Jada. That's courage." She looked away, unsure. Her hands moved to her baby, who was sleeping peacefully in the crib. "What if I mess up?" she asked. Marcus smiled gently. "Then you'll get back up, like you always have." There was a long pause. Then Jada said quietly, "Okay, I'll try." Marcus nodded, proud. "That's all I ask." The day of the event came, and Jada was nervous. She wore a new dress Marcus had sent her, simple but elegant, and held baby Hope in her arms. When they arrived at the hall, many eyes turned to her. She took a deep breath, held her head high, and walked forward. Marcus stayed by her side, quiet but steady. Like a shield against the noise on stage, Marcus gave a short speech, talking about hope, second chances, and unseen strength. Then he turned to Jada and said, "Now I want to introduce someone who changed my life more than she knows." Jada stepped forward, holding a small card with her notes. Her hands trembled, but when she looked at Marcus, she felt calm. She spoke slowly. "With honesty, a few months ago, I was on the street, pregnant, hungry, and scared. I asked for food, not money, and someone listened." She looked down at Hope, then back at the crowd. "I didn't think anyone cared anymore, but someone did, and because of that, I'm standing here today, not as a victim, but as a mother, and a woman with a future." The room was silent, then slowly filled with claps, some people even wiping tears from their eyes. Reporters tried to ask questions, but Marcus stepped in, guiding Jada off stage. "You did amazing," he said. She smiled through tears. "I was shaking the whole time." He laughed gently. No one could tell. Later that evening, news stories began to spread about a woman named Jada, who had once been homeless and was now helping others through Marcus's foundation. People online shared her story, saying how inspiring she was. Some even called her the face of hope. Jada didn't care about fame or attention. But what touched her heart was the number of women who reached out to the foundation afterward. Women in trouble, women without homes, women who needed someone to believe in them, and Jada was ready. She began working full-time with Marcus's team, helping build shelters, offering job training, and speaking at schools. Her voice became powerful, not loud, but real. Her story reminded people that kindness still mattered, that second chances were possible. Marcus watched from a distance with quiet pride. He had started this journey to help her, but now he realized she was helping him just as much. One day, as Jada was closing the office, Marcus stood by the door. "I have something for you," he said. He handed her a folder with official papers. "What is this?" she asked, opening it slowly. Her eyes widened. It was a deed to her apartment. He had signed it over to her name. "Now it's truly your home," he said. She stared at the paper, then at him. "Why?" He answered simply, "Because no one gave you anything before, and it's time you own something that's yours." Tears filled her eyes. "You're not just giving me a home," she said. "You're giving me dignity." Marcus placed a hand on her shoulder. "You've always had that. I just made sure you saw it." That night, Jada walked home with hope in her arms. She unlocked the door to her apartment, not borrowed, not temporary, but hers. She stepped inside, looked around, and whispered, "We're not just surviving anymore. We're living." And as she looked down at her baby, she knew one thing for sure. This was only the beginning. Not just of a better life, but of something far more powerful. A life filled with purpose, strength, and hope, just like her daughter's name. 1 year later, the city looked the same. But Jada's world was completely different. The cold streets she once walked barefoot were now just distant memories. Her morning started early with a warm cup of tea, soft baby giggles, and a list of people to help. Baby Hope had grown into a bright, smiling little girl with curly hair and eyes full of light. Every time Jada looked at her daughter, she saw a reason to keep going, to stay strong, and to keep giving back to others the way Marcus once gave to her. Jada now worked full-time at the Hope and Second Chances Foundation, the program Marcus had created and later handed over to her completely. She ran the place with heart and wisdom. Every day, women came in, some scared, some hungry, some carrying babies, just like she had done, and Jada welcomed them with open arms. She listened to their stories, offered shelter, shared her own past when needed, and helped them rebuild their lives, one woman at a time. Marcus still visited the foundation often, but he never stood in the spotlight. He stayed in the background, letting Jada lead. He watched proudly as she made speeches, handled tough calls, and fought for women's rights at local council meetings. She had become a voice of strength in the community. And her story inspired people far beyond the city. One day, a journalist from a big news channel came to the center. He wanted to do a story on Jada. But she wasn't sure at first. She didn't care about fame. It's only about the work. But Marcus said, "Your story can help people believe in good again. Let them see what hope really looks like." So Jada agreed, and the next day, cameras rolled. As she stood in front of the shelter she now owned, holding hope in her arms, the journalist asked, "How did this all begin?" And Jada said softly, with a simple question, "Is there anything left?" She explained how she was hungry, pregnant, and standing near a trash can. Hoping for leftovers, she shared how one man saw her, offered more than just food, and changed everything. Her voice didn't shake, because the pain had become her strength. She ended the interview by saying, "We rise not because we're lucky, but because someone sees us, believes in us, and stands beside us." The story aired that night, and within hours, donations poured into the foundation. Hundreds of emails arrived from people who wanted to help, volunteer, or simply say thank you. Jada was overwhelmed, but also deeply moved. The world had listened, and the message had landed in the hearts of thousands a week later. The mayor invited Jada to a special event at City Hall. She was honored with a Community Leadership Award, and the crowd gave her a standing ovation. In her speech, she said, "I was once invisible. Now I stand here because someone refused to look away." She held her daughter in one arm and raised the award in the other. "This isn't just for me. It's for every woman who's ever felt forgotten." After the event, Marcus walked beside her under the evening lights. The air was cool, but Jada didn't shiver. She wore a coat he had given her long ago, the same one she wore when she moved into her first apartment. They didn't talk much during the walk, but the silence between them felt peaceful finally. Marcus spoke, "You've done more than I ever imagined." She smiled, "You gave me the first step. That's all I needed." He stopped walking and looked at her seriously. "I want to do something more," he said, "something permanent." Jada raised an eyebrow, curious, "Like what?" "I want to open another center," he said, "in another city, and I want you to lead it too. Train new women to take over, build teams, spread this work across the country." Jada's eyes widened. "That's big," she whispered. Marcus nodded. "So are you." Tears filled her eyes, but she laughed too. "I never thought a question at a trash can would lead to this." Marcus smiled. Sometimes the smallest spark lights the biggest fire. Later that night, after Hope had fallen asleep, Jada sat by the window, watching the city lights. She held a small notebook in her hand, the same one she used to write in when she had nothing. She flipped through the pages, old notes written in shaky hands, reminders of food spots, shelter rules, quiet prayers. Then she turned to a fresh page and began to write again. This time, the words were full of power. "Today, I stood in City Hall, with a child on my hip and the world watching. I didn't feel weak. I didn't feel small. I felt seen. I felt strong." She closed the notebook and whispered to the quiet room, "We made it, baby girl," outside her window. The wind blew gently through the streets where she once walked alone and hungry. But now, that same wind carried the message of hope she had become. A woman who had once asked for scraps was now building bridges, lifting others, and proving that love, kindness, and second chances could rebuild even the most broken hearts. This was not the end of her story. It was just the beginning of many more. And every time someone knocked on her door with trembling hands and tired eyes, she would smile and say, "Come in, there's something left, and it's yours."